Welcome, Assalamu alaikum, and we are here today with episode 20 of Legal Technology and Innovation webinar series. And today, our title is Harnessing Innovation and Technology for a Sustainable Future in Bangladesh's Agriculture. And in this episode, we want to delve into the critical issue that we recently faced in our country, the flood, which had a huge impact. We actually saw this was actually the biggest flood we have seen in decades in Bangladesh. And how can technology be a powerful tool uh, for adoption and resilience? আমরা অ্যাকচুয়ালি এই এপিসোডে কথা বলবো আমরা ল কিভাবে রেলেভেন্ট ল ইউজ করে কিভাবে টেকনোলজি ইউজ করে কিভাবে নতুন নতুন ইনোভেশন দিয়ে উই হ্যাভ সিন সাম অ্যাকচুয়ালি ডিউরিং দ্য ফ্লাডস উই হ্যাভ সিন বুয়েটের কিছু স্টুডেন্টস অ্যাকচুয়ালি drums দিয়ে they made a boat. We have seen people were actually carrying their kids in a silver drum. So we have seen a lot of things being innovated at that time of crisis, and a lot of it actually can actually save the current severe flood situation in our country. এটা এখনো actually পুরাপুরি থেকে আমরা উঠতে পারি নাই এবং আমার it will take a while before we can actually completely cover up for the impact and the losses, economic losses that we face due to flood. Well, I am really excited because I'm going to be talking about all these exciting innovations and using technology that can help Bangladesh achieve a more sustainable future in agriculture. Because agriculture actually flooded সময় they are আমাদের farmersরা they are the most impacted because ওরা seasonally agriculture করে when there is a flood it takes a long time for that part of land to be ready for agriculture again. So in this meantime, what are they going to do? How are they going to survive? So অনেক অনেক রকমের একটা সেটব্যাক হয়ে যায় একটা দেশে. So, without further ado, those of you who are joining us for the first time, I am Barrister Tasnuva Shelley, Supreme Court of Bangladesh. I practiced there for almost 18 years, and I'm very passionate about law, technology, and business. And I severely advocate and passionately advocate about technology-driven solutions, and I'm dedicated to closing the gap that we currently face between access to justice through tech. And with me to talk about this special topic on harnessing innovation and technology for a sustainable future in Bangladesh's agriculture, I have with me Dr. Qazi Bouland from Accenture to Axiata. And actually, his pursuit for solving the supply chain crisis is what gave birth to Agroshift. And he is a very passionate individual, and he's I have known him for a long time, actually maybe when we were kids, and I have seen him become this passionate individual who actually wants to create a social impact, and which is combined with your education and your innovation and dedication towards sustainable future in agriculture. Buland, Dr. Buland, thank you for giving us time, and welcome to Bangladesh 2.0. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel wonderful. Thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to be here and discussing everything that is to know about sustainable agriculture and what's in store for us.
In the past couple of months,
Yeah.
from the revolution to, this severe natural calamity, which, like I said, this was এরকম আসলে অনেক মানে লাস্ট 20-50 ইয়ার্সেও এরকম হয় নাই আমরা এবার যেরকম সিভিয়ার একটা ফ্লাড
Mm,
দেখেছি, but it
mm,
was also amazing to see how the nation united together
mm,
again
mm,
during this crisis. That was just so wonderful to see. I have seen some data like যে ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটির টিএসসিতে একদিনের মধ্যে তো কোটি টাকার ত্রাণ they collected like within a day. It was historic. And
mm,
still there are that have not been reached, sadly. I think
mm,
it got international coverage. There were, CNN people came over and reported this, how horrendous it was. People were living on rooftops, without basic food and shelter. So এইগুলা আমরা আসলে, these are some of the challenges, যেটা বললাম যে
mm,
মেইনলি দ্য অ্যাগ্রিকালচার ইজ, আরো অনেকগুলাই প্রবলেম আমরা এখান থেকে দেখবো।
mm,
কিন্তু এর সাথে সাথে যখন হয়, যেটা আমি বলছিলাম, যে আমাদের এগ্রিকালচারের জন্য যে ল্যান্ডটা ইউজ করা হয়, ফার্মাররা যেটা ইউজ করে,
mm,
ওইটা আসলে তখন আর নট ফিট
mm,
to do anything anymore, and it will may take months for it to get ready again, when they can put the seeds and start with the regular process. So what did they do within that time? And what I want to know, because you have been in this field, and I love that you did a PhD in electronic engineering, and now you're combining that, your knowledge and your education, with agriculture, which is a unique
mm,
combination. And I love such unique combinations. And the way you're coming up with innovation, and
mm,
that can solve problems, for like the farmers, for the overall, for having a sustainable agricultural future in our country. Because আমরা তো জানি আমাদের দেশে আমরা, you know ফার্মার্সরাই অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমাদেরকে চালায়। হ্যাঁ, দে আর ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট সেক্টর ফর আওয়ার কান্ট্রি, বাট আসলে আমরা ওদেরকে ওরকম ভাবে
mm,
রেসপেক্ট অর ওই ভ্যালুটা আমরা দেই না। বাট আই এম very happy and I'm very proud that you completely work with them.
mm,
Your work is revolving completely around them. So that is amazing. And you lived in the UK for 17 years,
mm.
and you came back to work with the farmers. I mean, that's amazing. So, just to একটু বোঝার জন্য, just as a basic idea, যে why do you think বাংলাদেশের এই agricultural challenges গুলো কি কি নিয়ে, মানে একটা basic overall, ডিপে ঢুকবো না, top 2 3, what are
Yeah.
the challenges in Bangladesh agriculture?
I think এটা আসলে it's not a very it is going to be a multifaceted answer. Can give you a very straightforward reason of some of the challenges, the key challenges of Bangladeshi agricultural sector, but um, there are quite a few, as you would expect. Um, I think agricultural ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে কি, it has different stages to it. So you have the pre-harvest, right, and then you have the post-harvest, right. I'm talking, this is specifically for crops. This is an area that I deal with, right. I don't actually deal with cattle and livestock. That's a different area by itself, and fisheries is a different area, right. So,
Don't talk about that.
so
Yeah.
there's no one size fits all, but but that is still agriculture nonetheless, right? Those are still farmers that are producing at the end of the day. But I can tell you, the line of work that we do, the business that we do, we interact and we deal with farming or farmers. I would say from the cropping side of things. And Bangladesh actually, when you mentioned agriculture and farmers, they think about ওই যে hat পরা খেতে খাটা কৃষক in the paddy field, right? So
ট্রাক্টর
paddy,
ট্রাক্টর চালাচ্ছে গরুর সামনে।
yeah, and and again, it's usually paddy, right? So Bangladesh actually, you know, one of the things about Bangladeshi agricultural sector is that, of course, I'm sure uh, almost 40% of the workforce is involved within this sector. So currently and within the mid to, I guess, short to midterm future, it will still be a predominant sector for the economy, right? Although it contributes maybe 13 to 15% of the overall GDP, but you've still got a massive workforce, um, you know, being a part of it, right? in some form or the other. So saying that, I think one of the issues, as I was talking about, Bangladeshi farmer চিন্তা করলে, we think about, them as paddy farmers. This has worked really well. On end, it has given us, I guess, become allowed us to become a sustenance ব্যাপারে, food sustenance ব্যাপারে Bangladesh has been able to achieve that milestone, right? So, it is one of our, I guess, major diets, and it has helped Bangladeshis, and Bangladesh as a country, to overcome that. But saying that, what has happened over the last few decades is that, paddy is pretty much all we grow. I think close to 75% to 80% of all the farming, or at least the crop farming that we do, is paddy, right? So what happens is there are other crops of high value, right? Fruits and vegetable, যেগুলো হয়তো কৃষকরা করতে পারে, and that would give them higher income, right? Greater output, greater productivity. But oigula econo, it still hasn't been the case for Bangladesh, right? There are a number of reasons why this hasn't happened. But crop variety. One of the issues, I would say, is Bangladesh agricultural sector hasn't focused or diversified beyond, a lot beyond paddy farming, for example, right? So farmers are doing the same things over and over again, same crop over and over again, year after year, right? But whereas they could be a little bit, I guess,
Yeah, they
uh,
want to play safe. I think they
yeah,
want to play safe. They want to do what they know, what they're good at, what their generations have been doing. But আমার মনে হয় that doesn't that lead to soil degradation একটা problem? Soil degradationটা হয়ে যায় because when you're using the same soil for the
yeah,
same thing.
yep. And I think, if you look at it, paddy is a very carbon intensive, practice, right? And I could be, if memory serves me right, a big chunk of global carbon emission comes from farming. And within that, a big chunk comes from paddy farming, believe this or not, right? It's because what happens is, not only does it emit carbon, a lot of carbon into the environment, but there's a lot of inefficient use of water. So if you've seen paddy farming, it's almost submerged in
Uh,
water, right? So there's a lot
yeah,
of water that's required for paddy farming.
yeah,
So when that combines with all the chemicals and all the inputs that's used for farming, for crop, for the paddy production, there's a lot of carbon that emits into the environment, and that is a big, sort of a contributor to, I guess, carbon emissions globally.
climate change is one another challenge because এই যে কার্বন আমরা করছি ফার্মিং থেকে without even realizing it, we are thinking this was the practice before, we'll continue doing it. The
Mhm.
fact that when you are doing farming and paddy fielding in the same soil year after year, day after night,
Yep,
it
yep,
does
that
degrade.
happens.
You do need to kind of change, the kind of
Crop
seeds and
rotation. So it's what you're telling is crop rotation, right? So
yeah.
that is also an element where that keeps the soil much more fertile, productive. It's an age-old, sort of technique, but
Mhm.
yes, that is also the case. So কৃষকরা যেটা করে, year after year, they're growing the same kind of crops in the same land. Yield
Yeah.
কমে যাওয়া শুরু করে, and as a result, also their income as well. But also, but it's also demand, the classic case of demand, supply and demand, right? You've got so much of paddy and paddy farmers, the supply is the surplus is a lot, right? So when it comes to sell it in the market, সবার একসাথেই তো harvest হয়. So there's a lot of production all getting into the market at the same time. And তখন demand তো আসলে ওইভাবে বাড়ছে না, কমছে না. Demand is growing at a steady state. So, as a result, farmers don't actually really make, the margins aren't there after a while. ওইভাবে.
exactly. And I see like this, uh, whatever you're saying আমরা সবাই জানি বুঝছি, কিন্তু we are not actually kind of taking a bold step to fix this. Maybe যেটা আমার মনে হচ্ছে, maybe technology can be a very important tool. আহ, একবার আমার এই পার্টিকুলার ল্যান্ডে আমি একটা ক্রপ করলাম, হয়ে গেল, then why don't I use some sort of technology that I can test my soil and it can tell me what is this best for right now,
ওকে,
then
আমি একটু
use it.
কনভারসেশনটা আমি একটু তোমার কোয়েশ্চেনটার কনভারসেশনটা আরেকটু অন্যভাবে, আমি I understand what you mean, but I think before we get into technology, there is a missing piece, a big piece, which is infrastructure, right? So infrastructure বলতে
Hmm.
আমরা কি
Of
বুঝাই?
course, of course.
Infrastructure বলতে আমরা স্টোরেজ বুঝাই, রাইট? ইনফ্রাস্ট্রাকচার বলতে আমরা লজিস্টিক্স বুঝাই,
Supply
লজিস্টিক্সের ভিতরে
chain,
ট্রান্সপোর্টেশন,
supply
ট্রান্সপোর্টেশন,
chain.
right? Storageর ভিতরে there are two types of storage. Most common storage যেটা মানুষ বুঝে, সেটা হচ্ছে cold chain, right? So cold chain is important for a lot, so for many crops. For example, আমাদের আলু, potatoes are stored in cold chains after harvest, right? So harvest period শেষ হয়ে যাওয়ার পরে,
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
No. So
Oh,
a lot of the deshi alus that we get or potatoes that we get come from cold chain, right? So so farmerরা cold chain store করে দেখে এবং আস্তে আস্তে staggered manner across the months they then release it into the market at higher margin, right? Which is great. It's an amazing practice and it's also reduces Bangladesh's need to import and obviously less import money, though it means a much more healthier balance sheet nationally, right? So um, so that has happened, but আরেকটা হচ্ছে the need for cold storage or cold chain within the supply chain, but also there is a need for I guess other kinds of storage like grain storage, for example, right? So what we need, so part of the problem is, you know, for example, I'm going to go back to the example of paddy, right? So paddy, we have, you know, Amon and we have the Boro season, the major ones, right? So these are the two major seasons where we have paddy production, right? So প্রোডাকশনের পরে কি হয়, কৃষকগুলো তো আসলে তো they're mostly you know, very low income households, right? So they'll have to sell the produce into the market immediately, right? আহ, যারা পারে হয়তো ছোট স্কেলে কিছু প্যাডি ধরে রাখে, but those are for their primarily for their own consumption, but also কিছু হয়তো অল্প amount they will sell back into the market uh, out of harvest seasonের পরে because তখন তখন দামটা ভালো পাবে, right? But really, what we need, and also at the same time, is although Bangladesh has been phenomenal in paddy production or rice production, right? What has happened? তুমি দেখবা যে প্রতি বছরে বাম্পার প্রোডাকশন হয়েছে। Government is claiming, oh, we're, you know, self-sufficient in food. আমাদের rice bumper production, but at the same time, if you look at the import numbers, you're going to be seeing actually every year we're having to import rice. Why is that? The simple reason is we don't have storage. We don't have grain storage facilities, right? So এই ইম্পোর্টটাও করা লাগতো না if we had the right kind of storage. So I'm not saying just for paddy, it could be for maize, it could be for wheat, and that's where a lot of the, I guess, advanced agricultural economies, right? Whether the US, Russia, for that matter, you would see a lot of the, you go to these places, you'd see grain elevators, right? So, for example, if you go to, I guess, somewhere where there's a lot of soya cultivation in the U.S. So the Midwest, for example, right? Illinois is one of those hubs. So you can see actually there's a lot of I guess soya production there, and then
sorry.
you have, yeah, soybean production, and what you see is you have these grain elevators, right? So where farmers can actually sell to these grain elevators, they would take those grains from the farmers and store it, right, in big silos, right? So I'm just giving an example, right? So storage doesn't necessarily have to be cold, although we need a lot of cold chain, but we also need grain storage as well. So storage becomes a very integral part, and that's what I mean by infrastructure, right? As one of the
So
elements of.
So I have a follow-up question, because storage, of course, we can see it's important, and we're talking about cold stone storage. So isn't that expensive? Which one is more like, মানে the আমাদের
Yes,
নাই
well, the initial capex investment is high.
for
Again,
cold storage?
it doesn't need to be a private investment. It can be a combination of private public investments. Uh, just the other day, I was looking at Tunisia. The government of Tunisia spent about 150 million dollars on building silos for their wheat. Right, so wheat, like us in Tunisia, it's like pot to them, right? So, and 90% of the wheat is actually imported. They don't actually grow it, right? So of course, in emerging markets, it's not. I guess there is a lot of focus that is needed to reduce imports, unnecessary imports where needed. So if you can, for example, buy in bulk, right, and store it. So you can buy it throughout the year in different price points, or you could buy it when it's really cheap, right? And then you store it, right? So it works out better for you. So that's what Tunisia did, right? So, for example, capex initially obviously investment আছে, but in the long term implication of the is that you actually the nation saves money, you reduce dependence on imports, right? And the producers, for example, whether it's the traders or the farmers in between, they can actually they carve out higher margins because out of season sell করলে তো you're going to get better prices, right? So that's the theory.
It's a great theory, and I hope it works. কিন্তু আমাদের মনে হয় যে বাংলাদেশের পার্সপেক্টিভে যেটা হয়, আহ, আমরা এটাকে আসলে নেগেটিভ ভাবে ইউজ করি, যেটার জন্য আরেকটা ইম্প্যাক্ট হয়, উইচ আই ডোন্ট ওয়ান্ট গো টু মাচ ইনটু ডিটেল, যে এখানে আবার ওই যে সবকিছু স্টক করে রাখি এট লোয়ার প্রাইস, তারপর আমি জানি যে রোজার সময় ওয়াই ইজ ইট দ্যাট এভরিথিং ইজ ভেরি হাই ইন দ্য মার্কেট, মানে
Right.
চাল ডাল সবকিছুর দাম বেড়ে যায় অটোমেটিক। দের ইজ
Mm.
সিন্ডিকেশনের আবার ব্যাপার থাকে, ওরা ইচ্ছা করে আটকায় রাখে টু আর্টিফিশিয়ালি ক্রিয়েট দিস ডিমান্ড অ্যান্ড ইনক্রিজ দ্য প্রাইস অফ দ্য বেসিক
Mm.
এসেনশিয়াল কমোডিটিস। সো
Mm.
এখানে আই
Mm.
গেস একটা অ্যাবিউজও হয়। সো ওইটার জন্য আবার আরেকটা, উই নিড another few sessions on that, but
No,
okay,
that's a
storage
that's
is
a
very
that's a great
important for.
point. That's a great point. So hoarding is a problem, and syndicates do exist, particularly within the commodity space. Um, but it's an interesting point. I think that calls for a discussion on its own right.
It
But
does.
really,
Just one, there are many.
regardless, I guess there are different parts within the supply chain where you will need storages, right? So just because you have, I guess, storage facilities, I think what you're saying is it's once the storage becomes closer to the consumers, it can be misused by the syndicates. But if you have storage, for example, even processing এর আগেও, for example, paddy তো store করতে হবে, right? But paddy is then processed into rice. But ওই paddy স্টোরেজের জন্য actually benefit করবে কিন্তু তোমার farmer, right? So we talk about a flooded impact, right? So I don't have the numbers, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the stored grains or paddy for in this matter হয়তো অনেক damage হয়েছে, right? So if they were particularly stored,
I mean, actually, I got some numbers
yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
for our audience today that how much we have actually gone through. So this is a bit. This report was is as of 30th August. It was done by the Eastern Flash Floods 2024 Situation Report number 2, where they highlighted that the devastating impact on the communities across 11 districts in the eastern regions of the country.
Hmm.
And according to the National Disaster Response Coordination Center, some 5.8 million people in the northeastern and southeastern regions have been affected, and more than 1 million people are in communities cut off by the flooding. A reported 502 and 501 people, 403 were became evacuation shelters. A total of 2,096 flood, loss of fisheries, approximately amounting to USD 122 million, and livestock loss of USD 34 million. It was initially. And the districts most affected were Noakhali, Kumilla, Lokhipur, Feni, Chattogram, Molivibazar. The rural roads, the agricultural fields, the fish ponds, they have all submerged. And Noakhali, actually, over 50% of the effective areas remain unreachable by the local authorities and the frontline responders. A recent report, as recent as September 15th, in Dhaka Tribune, this came up, the immediate impact of floods in Bangladesh, যেখানে বলছে যে আমরা, the floods, impacted by the climate change, it has led to devastating consequences, loss of lives, destruction of property, disruption of livelihoods. It has caused economic losses, including damage to infrastructure, agriculture, homes, impacting overall well-being of the affected population. The 11 is eastern district of Bangladesh have caused widespread devastation, and with a death toll rising to 82 people. Agriculture has been severely hit, with nearly 297,000 hectares of cropland flooded, and the fisheries and livestock industries reportedly combined losses of over 155 million. These are just, like I said, these were just the highlights of it. So we kind of have an idea that that you were mentioning at the beginning, that when we talk about agriculture, it's just not paddy fields, it also means fisheries, the livestock. So we can see all this has actually been impacted due to this severe
Devastating impact.
flood.
Yes.
Yeah, and এখন যেটা মনে হচ্ছে যে এটা তো অ্যাকচুয়ালি ওভারনাইট আমরা এরকম করতে পারবো না, বাট আই ফিল লাইক দিস ইজ প্রবাবলি আ গুড অপরচুনিটি for us when we're rebuilding. We think about these issues so that when we're rebuilding and recreating these soils and getting them ready for crop and paddy, we consider the storage issue. We consider we give share knowledge on the soil degradation issue, like একটাতে তুমি at least 5 বার করো তারপরে do something else. So এই যে এই জিনিসগুলা, and at this point also, maybe we can introduce some sort of technology which can basically give automated alerts, or because there are pesticides are also an issue, whether it's ready or not. So এইসব এর মধ্যে I want to know from you, এই long term যে economic loss, এই যে এত, so how are we going to overcome this?
Hmm. I think that it's not a very easy question to answer. There are preventive techniques that stop reduce the floods from happening, right? একদমই যে মানে বন্ধ করা যাবে এটা না, but you can reduce the number of floods, right? Uh,
যেরকম
এবারে
এইবার, for
এবার was heavy monsoon.
এইবার,
এবারে was heavy monsoon, right? So
was
there
it
was.
heavy monsoon, or was it because the barrier, that water flow
I,
from the
I
neighboring
can't
countries?
answer that question without I'm not in a place to answer that question because I don't
No,
know.
let's
Actually,
just put
I
it
don't know.
this way, because there was no warning for a lot of people that usually they get, that
Yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
is a heavy flood coming in. Because I was in Cox's Bazar 2 weeks ago, I've seen,
Mm,
like, there are warnings, there are, like, red flags, shotorko lal, shotorko patch, and all this. You're getting SMS
mm.
alerts. So there was no such thing that happened this time, which is why I guess the impact
Yeah,
has been more
and I
severe.
guess part of the solution is actually what you're raising, right? Is how do we have much more effective systems from our end, right?
Yeah,
To
I
to
mean, what
sense
can
it,
we do?
to put in all the preventive mechanisms, right? Before such
I
things
believe
happen.
it's better to be safe than sorry. So, yeah.
Right. But, bearing in mind to going back to your original question is, floods will happen, then what to do, right? There are a number of things that we can do, right? Flood is not just the only thing that is coming from climate change or global warming. This is where your crop varieties, right, become very important. So, we have the concept of crops that can withstand high temperatures, right? So temperatures are also rising, right? So a particular crop that would probably survive and give you good production and yield in, let's say, 35 degrees centigrade average, now you're probably hitting 38 degrees, right, in peak summer. So you probably need to have some kind of varieties there, resistant varieties to temperature, to also floods, right? So those are, biotechnological advances that can be put in place. And Bangladesh has done amazing. In the 70s, there was a emphasis on hybrid crops, particularly the rice that we get now are a result of such R&D, right? So they are better resistant to a lot of the insects, better resistant to, in many cases, the temperature, and also to a certain extent the flood. But things change, time changes, and you need to recalibrate, right? So this isn't something new. So those things have been done in the past, and they can be done better now, right? With advances in technology in all streams. The other bit, I think, technology, bolte, it's not always digital technology. I have very strong views on how well you can adopt digital technologies into the overall agricultural ecosystem. We have to be pragmatic and deploy those technologies meaningfully and practically, right? So, for example, IoT is a broad vertical within the space. Uh, কতটুকু applicable হতে পারে? How much is it economic? How does it economically make sense for a farmer, smallholder farmer, right? Is the question, right? So এগুলা কি কন্ট্রাক্ট ফার্মিং, যারা বড় বড় ম্যানুফ্যাকচারার কন্ট্রাক্ট ফার্মিং করছে, say for example, a conglomerate or an FMCG producer that needs a lot of, I guess, mango for their mango juice production, right? And they do a lot of contract farming, and it's easy for them to deploy these technologies, right? Soil health monitor করবে, water level monitor করবে, right? Weather forecast দেখবে, right? এগুলোরও করতে
ড্রোনস
পারো।
দিয়ে ড্রোনস দিয়ে
ড্রোন
পুরো এরিয়া কভার
স্প্রে
করবে।
করবে, হ্যাঁ, এগুলো করা যায়, right? But how much is it practical for the everyday farmer, right, that owns maybe 1 acre of land, for
Yeah.
example, on an average? It's not. Practically, it doesn't make sense. Economically, doesn't make sense, right? So so technology বলতে কিন্তু আমি বলি যে more on the biosciences, right?
Hmm.
uh, at this moment than the digital. Of course, করা যাবে, and you can have adoption in certain use cases, but case by case আমাদের দেখতে হবে.
No, but I think আমি আমাদের agriculture এগুলাকে দেখছি that they are actually moving forward. We we have seen strawberries being grown here,
Mhm.
which we never had before. There are lots of, like, dragon fruit.
Hmm.
We get dragon fruits, local dragon fruits, which is
I
amazing.
know. Yeah, I know.
So
It's amazing. Yeah. So
I have my eye out for avocados.
uh, now, of course. So, Agula, these are all the nice things that are happening in the sector. So, some farmers are actually getting smarter uh, and growing these different kinds of high value crops. And again, it's not by accident, right? So, there has been cases where a lot of the NGOs in the past have undertaken such initiatives and projects, and some of the sort of positives we're seeing, right? So it's not by fluke this has happened, right? There's been a lot of other players in the past that have pushed it, but we need to do better.
But at least we started. So I'm positive about that. At least we took the first step. And
But
we talked about flood. And
mentioning about using technology. So from a high tech perspective, there's got to be an alleyway where you can use satellite imagery to predict floods, right? Why aren't we doing that, right? If you can measure, or if you can understand soil health all those miles away from space,
yeah,
surely you can actually see floods happening before they actually happen, right? So there is tech there that can be used for countries like Bangladesh and Maldives, for that matter, all those low-lying countries that are volatile to flooding.
mhm.
We need to sort of exploit and look into these technologies, right?
হ্যাঁ, I guess technology আমরা বলি যে টেকনোলজির অনেক বেনিফিটস আছে, but also I feel like at the same time there are certain challenges in using technology. And now আমরা flood and how, what farmers can do, how they can benefit. And যেটা বললাম, it's not just one sector, it has to be a collaborative effort. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the FMG sector who are actually in this industry, the farmers, the agricultural ministry. So a lot of private public partnership I see would kind of give a fruitful result. And I think some has happened, but a lot more needs to be done. And with that, I actually wanted to ask you about, because you won this award, uh, Pitch to Fork.
Mm.
Okay, this was an award that you won in 2022. I think it was held in Dubai
Mm-hmm.
by
USEC.
the Right
USEC.
to Protein South Asia Forum,
Yeah, and it's by a great organization called US
US Soya
US Soya
Export
Export
Council.
Council. Yeah.
Yeah, and you won an award in 2022, and then in 2023 you went there in the same platform and you were a judge.
So you understand. So soybean is one of those agricultural commodities that are in great use globally, right? So
Yeah,
soybean thing we get edible oil. So the
yeah.
cooking oil that we eat,
Soybean
that we
tel,
use is
soybean
soybean
tel.
thing, right? And then
Yeah,
you have the crushers that crush the soybeans to get the oil.
yeah,
Once
yeah,
it's crushed, the byproduct is one of the integral products of animal feed,
yeah,
right? So soybeaনের আরো অনেক use case আছে, it's a high protein product, এখান থেকে আরো অনেক kind of processed food হয়, right? So but it's basically a globally traded commodity, right? So Brazil and US are one of the two leading producing countries in the world. So every year they have this session where they invite agritechs globally, and in 2022, we won it, right? It was the first time they hosted it, and we were, I guess, the first cohort that won. And after that, they invited us to be a judge in the one after, right? So yeah, we're very happy. But more than that, we're actually happy to
The
work.
country is very happy. The country is very happy. You made Bangladesh very proud.
Well, Joshi,
It was probably
that's
the first time.
I'm thank you, but it's just an award. It doesn't really mean much. But what really is
No, it was in a global platform. So yeah, that does mean a lot. So credit should be given when it's due. So what the whole thing that got you this award was Agroshift.
yeah.
Okay, Agroshift is one of your passion
Mhm.
project. It's your baby, where you are trying to combine your education in the and experience in your IT sector and
Mhm.
solving a real life problem
Mhm.
where which is being faced day in day out in
Mhm.
Bangladesh, which
Mhm.
involves the consumers, the farmers, the wholesalers, the distributors, and everything else in between. So,
Mhm.
why don't you tell us a bit more about
Yeah. Okay.
Agroshift and
So
how
yeah,
that's
that's
shifting?
yeah. I think I mean, to me, you highlighted a few keywords here, right? And I think it's important to understand. When we talk about agriculture and agri-tech, there's this. I guess in many cases, people think about farmers, right? And they think about farmers working in the field. Of course, it's
Using
always
technology. Yeah,
well,
yeah, no.
that's advanced economies, right? But you talk about Southeast Asia, you talk about South Asia, you talk about agri-techs. A lot of the agri-techs, they're known to kind of use imageries where you have farmers, and the in their natural habitat, they're doing farming. গ্রামে একটা কৃষক, you know খেতে কাজ করতেছেন. It's all nice. I mean, gives this feel good factor to it, right? But agriculture and agri-tech, it just isn't about farmers per se. There are a lot of other actors in the value chain, right?
Yep.
So let me give you a data that you know you may listen to it and be like, wow, I didn't know that, right? Did you know Bangladesh is the third largest importer of food?
And we have people dying out of hunger.
No, no. Bangladesh is the third largest importer of food. Whether that is, Bangladesh is predominantly, an agriculture centric society economy, right? So then we have to import so much food.
We eat a lot. Is that the problem?
Again, we grow a lot of paddy, and we don't grow enough onions.
Storage, yeah, storage.
We do grow enough onions and potatoes, but we don't store it well enough, right? This is the point. This is how I'm connecting everything that I just said previously, right? So why do we need to import so much? Why are we the third largest importer of food in the world, right? And especially in a time like that, when the balance sheet of the nation isn't as healthy as it should be, it's difficult to make those imports, right? So 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 this is where I think, part of what we do at AgroShift is basically understanding that, hey, you've got the locally grown produce, right, from the farmers. How do we work with them in a much more effective manner, so that they can have better market access, right? So to start with, I think your original question was, what is it that we do at AgroShift, right? I think AgroShift started off, when we started off, the idea behind it was, Um, and I looked at other comparable markets like India and Indonesia, where there was a lot of agri-techs working around the time. And the idea was that if that kind of thing can happen in those markets, surely we can at least try and replicate those models, right? So that's, to be honest, that's the easier way to start on something, right? And I'll admit, that was the original idea. We looked at other agri-techs across the region, right? And we said, oh, okay, there's a lot of agri-techs playing in the market linkage. মার্কেট লিঙ্কেজ বলতে আমরা কি বুঝাই? যে কৃষকদের যে প্রোডাক্টটা হবে এইটা আমরা বায়ারদের কাছে বিক্রি করব, ইন্টারমিডিয়েট গুলাকে বাদ দিয়ে, মিডলম্যান গুলাকে বাদ দিয়ে, রাইট?
From
সাউন্ডস
farm to table.
ফার্ম
From
টু
farm to
টেবল,
table.
রাইট? শুনতেই অনেক ভালো লাগে। It's almost a romantic concept, right? Um, but
I feel healthy already.
but there are certain challenges to making it happen, right? There are reasons why middlemen exist. There are reasons why these intermediaries exist, right? So to think that তুমি এসে ডে ওয়ানে এদেরকে তুমি বাদ দিয়ে দিবা, এটা আসলে তো হয় না, and this is, we learned it the hard way, right? So what we realized is, Amra, when we started off, we were basically focusing on, oh, okay, Amra je kishok ache, we're going to build farmer communities, and basically এসব কৃষকদের থেকে আমরা পণ্যগুলো কিনে we're going to sell it to different businesses that may need it, like all these super shops, like Shopno, Agora, and all that kind of other super chains that we have across the retail chains that we have,
Unimar.
Unimart, right? But really, what we realized is, A, they have their own supply chain team, right? They don't need us. They can do their own sourcing. And B, they don't actually care about what we have to offer, right? So the market actually key. Then কৃষকদের থেকে কিনে, then I have to go to Kauran Bazaar to actually sell it to all the other wholesale markets. Then আমি আসলে কি value add করলাম? I'm just another glorified trader, right? In the supply chain. So I'm not actually adding any value, right? So then we stumbled on the idea, what are we actually trying to do? What is our vision, right? We want people or consumers to have access to higher quality food at a decent price. That is the fundamental problem of Bangladeshi consumers, whether it is the low income group to the high income group. একই problem কিন্তু face করে, right? So
True.
so
True.
so that is the problem. So যদি আমাদের কনজিউমারের কাছে খাবারটা নিয়ে যেতে হয়, then what do? We looked at other technologies, or I guess say sectors, e-commerce being one of them, right? And we said, okay, e-commerce is all great and all, but the proliferation of the usage that's required for e-commerce to grow, it's going to take a while, right? So, Joshi, I'm pretty sure you don't order your groceries through an e-commerce platform.
I mean, everybody did during
Yeah,
COVID,
there's still, look,
but
look,
still,
there
your
is a there
parents
is a
prefer
demographic that uses it,
Jabal
right?
Bazaar.
There is a demographic that uses it, but
Yeah,
it's still not widely adopted yet, right? So it's gonna get there someday.
it's
But
not.
তুমি তাহলে
No.
in between কি করবা? তুমি বসে থাকবা? তুমি বসে থাকবা না তো, right? You have to adopt tactics and go to market strategies that you can exploit immediately. So what we did was, our আরেকটা partner ছিল who was actually working with the blue collar industry, particularly the RMG factories, right? He was rolling out a fintech solution there working for another company, another startup, right? And he said, hey, why don't we actually consider these RMG factory workers to be our primary customers? There's about 4.3 million of them, big in number, right? And the best thing about it is they're all in like these, campus styled environments, right? এক একটা বড় বড় ফ্যাক্টরিতে 10 15 20 30 50,000,
20,000.
right?
Mhm.
Right? So if you can penetrate one factory, then you have access to a lot of consumers in one go. And these workers are actually based on their socioeconomic sort of a profile, they would be in much need of the kind of services that we were offering. So আমরা এই produce গুলা directly from the producers, whether not just farmers, but also we were working with a lot of manufacturers like processors যারা চাল বানায়, যারা ডাল বানায়, যারা আটা বানায়, not the big ones necessarily, right? So we were sourcing all these products from them and literally cutting off all the other intermediary sort of players, the middlemen, the traders. And because we use tech, so we were able to pre-aggregate the order from these workers. That means আমরা বড় একটা demand already aggregate করতে পারতাম, and then we then tapped into the supply chain, the sourcing, and we were bringing it to them. So that's how Agroshift formed, right? So that's what the original go-to-market. To this day, it is still the predominant go-to-market. But what we realized in the last 2 years is that, you know, uh, farming থাকবে, there's going to be a lot of farming in Bangladesh, right? But we have to be realistic. There's a lot of other commodities that are imported, right? So Amra, what we're also doing is we're also stepping into the cross-border trade, right? We're not necessarily importing directly, but we are somewhere sitting in the middle between these buyers locally and sellers globally, right? So Agroshift is now also a platform where the buyers locally can get connected to sellers globally, right? And start sourcing these products at a much more competitive prices than they're used to, right? We give them access to sellers that they weren't exposed to before. And we understand that এখানেও একটা পুরানো স্বভাব চলে আসছিল, right? Because of a lack of tech and lack of exposure, এসব বায়ার গুলা একই বায়ারদের থেকেই বছরের পর বছর কিনে, right? So there is definitely another world in the commodities trade that we're now stepping into. That means that Bangladesh এরই supply chain, global supply chain যেটা, একটা হচ্ছে তোমার internal domestic supply chain for food, আর একটা হচ্ছে তোমার global supply chain. And that is equally important, Joshi, right? A lot of people don't understand that. So this is where we come in and we want to make that much more efficient.
I mean, I have seen Agroshift in action. So I could see how these RMG sector workers who actually wake up really early,
Yeah,
cook their lunch for themselves, their whole family, then walk miles to come to work.
yeah.
And then also on their way back, when they go back home tired, they still have to go cook for themselves, their family. So if they could get, because most of the salaries are more than 50, 60, 70% of it goes on essential food, buying, rice, chal, dal, alu, পেঁয়াজ, খাওয়া ভাতের জন্যই সব. So if we could help them, using technology and having people like you who wants to break the norm and disrupt this old way of working, then I can see that they're getting a lower price, they're getting better quality, and I feel like they're saving a bit of time also, which is also something that can help them have a better life. So, I mean, like I said, I have seen AgroShift in action. I have seen. Thank you for taking me for that ride.
No, of
And
course. Look, আমরা এটা আরেকটা এই কনজিউমার সাইটটাকে চুজ করার জন্য, কনজিউমার গ্রুপকে আরেকটা চুজ করার জন্য, we realize I told you one of the reasons why, with the practical reasons why we chose them as our go-to market, but they're also so important to Bangladesh, right?
they are
Because
very much.
they're still part of the sector that is giving them the highest Bangladesh's highest export earnings, right? That isn't going to go away anytime soon, and it's still
No.
going to be, I guess, Bangladesh economy bread and butter, right? And
Yep.
these are the workforce that's behind it. So if they're priced out of the basic necessities, that
Mhm.
cannot be accepted as a society, right? So there is a lot of government in sort of there has been a lot of I guess, yet to be realized, but there is strong government mandate, there is strong trade body mandates for these kind of wellness services, particularly how these workers can get access to um, lower priced essentials on a day-to-day basis. And this is where we step in, and then I'm proud, and it humbles me at time of the kind of the things that we're doing.
No, we are also humbled and very fortunate that you have actually thought of this sector. And like I said, they are actually the backbone. They have been the backbone of our country for a long time and often ignored due to, like, there was no minimum salary uh, for, till few years ago.
Yeah,
So,
it's not been a
so
very recent phenomenon. Yes,
yeah,
of course,
so
there has been a few iterations of wage changes, but yes, you're right that when it started, for many
yeah,
years, it was
it
this year.
hasn't been like it hasn't been many years that it started, but it's still considered very low when you compare with other countries, right? So at least helping them in making helping them see more value in their earnings. I guess it also gives them a sense of achievement, which is you cannot measure those things, but your work has been significantly benefiting this economy and the country. So I hope you continue to do this kind of work and, take it global. You already have. So I mean, we are almost out of time. So
No,
like I said,
thank you so much for having me. And
I'm
it just
almost done.
one hour session isn't enough. But I'm so happy to be here today, and really happy and honored to be here, Joshi. So thank you.
No, thank you, because harnessing innovation, technology in Bangladesh, it is not easy, because we know people. Technology doesn't mean having a smartphone. Uh,
Mhm.
Technology can mean, like you said, IoT of things. It's another. It's a huge area. So the fact that you focused on agriculture, uh, and these R&D sector, these hard working, they actually work really hard. It's physical labor. Like, they're
Mhm.
standing, they're actually doing something or the other. They act physical labor. So the
Mhm.
fact that you are giving some sort of ease in their life, আগে হয়তো 100 টাকাও বাঁচতো না বেতনের, এখন হয়তো 50 টাকা হইলেও বাঁচে, just an example. So that is also, that means the world to them. So thank you for doing this, and good luck with Agroshift. And I hope we continue this discussion on harnessing technology and innovation for agriculture in Bangladesh, because we know there's so much to do. There's so much to do. I mean, this is just the tip. This is, we
Just
haven't even got. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
iceberg.
just একদম একটা সাইডের একটা জিনিস অফ টেকনোলজি, বাট এখানে আরো অনেক ভাবে টেকনোলজি ইউজ করা যেতে পারে। অ্যান্ড
Mhm.
লাইক আই সেড, দ্য স্কোপ ইজ হিউজ, বাট we again, একা করা সম্ভব না। We need government interventions. We need a lot of R&D from research and organizations, with institutions. We need to kind of do a lot of academic research on how to leverage this, because it's here,
Mhm.
so why not do it? But with that, I think, again, thank you, Bulan, for your time. And
Thank you.
I hope everybody who watched this learned something, because I did. I actually had no idea the importance of storage, because in my head, it was basically done by all the evil people, uh, those syndicated people. But it actually has a positive side, but that never came to me. So thank you for bringing that up. And I hope everybody here enjoyed our discussion. And if you like this, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Thank you, Bulan, for being here. Have a great night.
Thank you.